Hey Flickers, welcome back to our channel. Today we'll be doing a recap for the movie The Invisible Man. Before getting into our video, subscribe to our channel to avoid missing any updates. Spoiler alert! Cecilia awakens in the wee hours of the morning. She climbs out of bed quietly so as not to wake Adrian, then reaches beneath the bed for the medicine she stashed there. As she walks out of the room, he moves a little in his sleep, startling her entirely. Cecilia walks slowly and purposefully to the dressing room, where she fills a duffel bag with clothes and tosses in the medicine. She then points the hallway camera towards her sleeping husband. She immediately gets dressed and exits the house through the garage. She sprints through the woods until she reaches a road where she waits for her sister Emily. She seems terrified after more than a moment. Cecilia finally gets in the car after her sister arrives. Suddenly, her husband comes behind her, chasing her down and smashing the window. They get in their car and drive away, but he discovers her diazepam on the ground. Cecilia is visiting a friend's house, James, 2 weeks later. She's still apprehensive about going outside, but he persuades her to go to the mailbox. When she opens it, she is startled by a man jogging and runs back inside. Emily is knocking on the door. Cecilia is upset because she believes her spouse may have followed her there. Her sister, on the other hand, has some good news. She shows her a news story on her phone that claims her husband is no longer alive. Cecilia is baffled as to how. She tells James and Emily how he would control every aspect of her life, from how she looked to how she spoke and thought. His abuse was not limited to physical assault. Cecilia and Emily are later found in a law office. Adrian's brother, who is also a lawyer, reads the deceased's final instructions, including a $5 million inheritance for Cecilia on the condition that she is never charged with a crime or deemed mentally ill. James departs for work the following day and asks Cecilia to wake Sydney up. She does so while the stove is still turned on. The breakfast catches fire, and the girl uses a fire extinguisher to put it out. Cecilia is alone at home later that day when she notices something weird and decides to investigate. She searches the entire house but finds nothing until she hears the front door open. Even though no one is present, she still feels uncomfortable. Cecilia and Sydney are both sleeping in Sydney's room on the same night. Cecilia is startled when someone takes their covers off and begins messing with the light in the room. She thinks she sees someone in the room, but it turns out to be Sydney's mannequin. She then picks up the covers off the floor and notices someone on the chair next to her, so she throws the covers at them. There isn't anybody. She tugs at the blankets, but they don't budge. It's as if someone is standing on them when she stares at them. Cecilia summons James, who inadvertently awakens Sydney and rushes into the room. Because neither he nor his daughter sees anyone, he tries to calm her down by telling her not to let Adrian's memory haunt her. Cecilia is scheduled for a job interview. Cecilia is in the shower when the phone rings. When she picks it up, it's her doctor telling her that high levels of diazepam in her system are the cause of her fainting. On the bathroom sink, Cecilia notices a bottle of diazepam. A bloody fingerprint can be seen on it. Cecilia afterward took James to see Adrian's younger sibling. She tells them about the diazepam bottle, claiming Adrian placed it there, but the brother dismisses her. She then claims that she does not believe he is dead, claiming that he has devised a method of becoming invisible and that she is sure his brother is aware of it. Cecilia informs her that Adrian sent the email, not her. Emily does not believe her and advises her to get assistance. Cecilia checks her email sent items later that night and discovers the one she sent to Emily. Sydney enters the room to find her sobbing on the floor. They decide to head out after a few reassuring remarks. When Sydney rises, she is struck by something. She instantly dials her father's number, believing Cecilia is the one who has done this to her. Cecilia realizes Adrian is nearby and begins yelling for him. She takes a bag of coffee and lays it out on the floor in one of the rooms before sitting on the other side of the door. She approaches Adrian, confident that he is present, and begs to be left alone. She has the idea to call his phone, and she can hear it ringing in the ceiling. Cecilia climbs into the ceiling and begins searching for him, but no one is there. When she hears a noise behind her, she grabs a paintbrush and tosses it at the ceiling's aperture, revealing the shape of a guy. When she hears the water running in the kitchen, she gets down from the ceiling and searches for him. An invisible hand grabs and raises her abruptly. It flings her about the home, they struggle, it hunts her down and attempts to strangle her, but she fights back and flees. Cecilia hails an Uber and instructs him to take her to Adrian's house where she resided. The dog follows her down to the basement laboratory where she immediately seeks out one of the gadgets. She examines a tablet affixed to the wall to determine it and eventually deactivates the device, revealing an invisibility suit. Cecilia sits uneasily at an empty restaurant chair waiting for her sister. When Emily arrives, she informs her about what she discovered at Adrian's residence, which she believes proves he is still alive. Emily is killed by a knife that appears to be floating in mid-air. It's in Cecilia's hands in the blink of an eye. Everyone in the restaurant freaks out and moves away from her when a customer yells. Cecilia is apprehended and pinned down. She is transported to a mental institution, shouting that she did not do the crime. She says Adrian killed her sister and that she knows he's there, staring at the empty corners of the room. Later, Cecilia speaks with a doctor who informs her that she is pregnant and that it occurred during the previous month. Adrian's brother visits her in the asylum the next day. He comes to tell her that she no longer has the right to Adrian's money since she's been charged with a crime and may be found mentally incompetent. She makes fun of him and compares him to his narcissistic psychopath sibling. He offers her the choice of signing the papers and forfeiting the money or having the baby and returning to Adrian. In one phone conversation, he gives her a new life with Adrian. She declines and steals one of his pens when he isn't looking. He promises to return in 3 days to hear her final decision. "You won't get the baby," she says as she starts cutting into her veins with the pen. Suddenly, the phantom figure snatches her hand and she repeatedly stabs him with the pen. When the security guard enters, he notices the damaged suit. He goes to stun the invisible man, but instead he stuns the guard with the stun pistol. Cecilia attempts to flee but is swiftly apprehended by 2 guards. They return her to her room when the man reappears and kills them both. Cecilia, armed with a rifle, is on the lookout for him. She notices an open trunk nearby and approaches it, figuring he's hiding inside. He takes her and strangles her, threatening her that he'll hurt the people she cares about, including Sydney, if she doesn't cooperate. Cecilia chases him down, but as soon as she steps outside, the unseen man accelerates toward her in his car, forcing another automobile to crash. Cecilia steals that car and pursues him once more. She contacts James while driving and instructs him to return to the house and safeguard Sydney. The unseen man enters her chamber after arriving at the home. She gets out of bed and takes the pepper spray from her backpack. She sprays him because she hears him moving and he falls over. She screams and flees, but the man catches her. Sydney begs him to stop beating up her father. She approaches the body and removes the mask, only to reveal that Adrian's brother was murdered. After tearing down a wall, the cops locate Adrian tied up in the basement. Later, James tells Cecilia how he was discovered. But she isn't convinced that he was his brother's murder victim. James tries to persuade her, but she feels Adrian set up his brother, making her believe she's the one who's crazy. She returns to the residence that night. Cecilia persists in her request for his entrance, and James stands outside the home, listening to everything they say. Adrian rushes over to comfort her while she's crying, but then reverts to his dominating ways. Cecilia walks to the restroom to clean herself up, and he sees her at the table waiting for her. He feels restless after she has been gone for a bit and kills himself. Cecilia returns after a bit of pause and quickly dials 911 for assistance. She pulls back into the security camera's blind spot, sits down, and watches him die. After hearing what has transpired, James rushes toward the house and discovers Cecilia fleeing. She tells him Adrian killed himself, but James notices the outfit in her duffel bag and wonders whether she planned it all along. She leaves everything behind as she walks out of the house. With that, we've come to an end. Let us know which one of these beds you found brilliant and why you're excited about it in the comments section below. Make sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more exciting content.